Welcome back, guys. I have an awesome, electrifying episode for you guys where we dive deep into the realms of nostalgia, pop culture, and all things geeky. I'm your host, Kibla, and today I have a special treat for you guys. Joining us on this amazing episode are none other than the dynamic duo behind one of the most beloved animated series of all time, the iconic X-Men, the animated series. That's right. I want to give a warm welcome to my esteemed guest, Eric and Julia Lewald, the brilliant writers and showrunners who brought the mutant superheroes to life on the small screen. Enjoy the show, guys. Welcome back, guys. It's Kibler from the Brothers Geek Out podcast, and I have got an absolute special episode for you guys. I want to say a massive thank you to Eric and Julia Lewald, who have joined us today, who are showrunners and writers for X-Men, the animated series. Thank you so much for coming on, guys.
Thank you so much for having us. This is a real pleasure.
Yeah, Kibble, it's nice. It's nice to talk to people across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys have been putting the time in, so it's been a absolute busy couple of months for you, I guess.
Oh yeah, with 97, who knew? I mean, think about this. We started working on the old X-Men back 32 years ago.
January 1990.
February
1992.
And we finished what the time was. Okay, it was a job. It was the best job we ever had. But we finished the job. It's 97. We're off to other shows. And now, a couple decades later, we get the phone call say, "Oh, we're gonna do a continuation of your show, and we want you." I mean, involved in a very small way. We must not take too much credit.
No.
About 130 somethings did this new show, and they were nice enough to involve us and use us, as they said, as their first audience. They did all the work, and we reviewed it. What a wonderful setup.
That must have been an amazing thing, because I always think of, like, we live in great times right now where 32 years later, we get this to happen again in a continued story. And you played a major part then. I still think you guys still play a major part on pushing this show and the love that you guys have for this. Did you kind of reconcile the impact it would have after 97, after leaving the show, to the point it is now?
We couldn't have imagined. No, really.
Going back, just to sort of set the table, back in 1992, when Eric, you were tapped to develop the show and come up with the first 13 stories with your head writer, Mark Edens, and I got to write one of those as a writer. All of us were told you have 13 episodes. That's it. Comic book fans know who the X-Men are, but the rest of the planet don't know who the X-Men are.
And they probably won't care. And Marvel stuff doesn't work in TV and movies. So just plan on being out of here after 13, because nobody has any faith. The only reason we're doing this is because this crazy lady, Margaret Lesh, who just became the head of Fox Kids, really wants to do it and believes in it, but the rest of us don't. And so just, give it your best shot. And after 13 episodes, the entire creative cast crew was let go. We were working on another show when it came out 4 months later, because it took so long to draw animation back then. 4 months later, it comes out in January 93, and it's a huge #1 hit. And everyone gets the phone call, "Can you come back? Can you come back?" And about 2/3 of us could, but we lost a chunk of our good people.
There was the expectations from the folks above everyone working on X-Men were so low that no one had a run of the series clause in their contract. We were all like, go. And when it's like, oh, let's do season 2, no one had a clause saying they had to come back for season 2.
Yeah, and to put it in perspective, over the years, we started in the mid 80s. I started mid 80s. She started late 80s. She's 3 years younger. And from then till now, we worked on over 50 different shows, starting at with her at TV animation at Disney with like Chippendale. And we couldn't imagine any of the others coming back 25 years later. They were what they were, and they did fine. But we just, X-Men was the one that the magic happened for us, and the others were satisfying in various ways. But this one, everything worked, and you have no control over that. You have no forewarning before you get started on a show, whether it's going to be that special or it's going to be forgettable. And so the fact that it became this big thing was amazing. Then we started going to cons about 7 years ago when we had our first book come out, and realized there are people all over the world, literally, that are dressing up as these characters and are still loving the show 25 years later. And that was what I think when we were the most stunned, when we were the most, oh my, something magic happened 25 years ago, and perhaps never to be duplicated in our lives. And that was quite gratifying.
Amazing. That's absolutely amazing, because yeah, it leaves this after effect of, as you said, with the fans and going to the cons. That's when you actually get to see what it means to us, and growing up with it. I mean, I was 12 at the time, 42 now. Most of the
Target
listeners.
demographic. You were the target demographic.
Yeah, I was, and I can't believe what sort of an impact that it left with me after that show, and then knowing what you guys must have went through during that period. Like, it must be an amazing feeling, guys.
And when you were tapped to come back for season 2 of the show, again, just to sort of remind folks, so the first 13 episodes, that ends with what we kind of consider the 3-parter, Days of Future Past Part 1 and 2, and then the final, the last episode, 13. You and Mark Ainsley crafted that as, okay, if the series never runs again, these are our 13 X-Men episodes. Then you were tapped to come back for a second season. Okay, here are 13 more episodes. And it wasn't until after that, it wasn't until season 3 on that it's like, oh, okay, we're on for more than 13 episodes.
We're gonna do 65 at least. So that was a gift. We had 2 tiny children at the time, and a house payments, and the fact that most of us work freelance, just script to script or show to show. The fact that we were in effect given another 2.5 years of work committed, that was number one in our minds. It wasn't just that, oh boy, we get to do more X-Men episodes. It was, oh, we can pay the bills, for 3 years.
And then funnily enough, episode 65, you crafted this big 4-parter to wrap the series up.
Beyond Good and Evil. And we're supposed to loot. And the theory was, as we wrote the story, we wrote the whole script out, our boss, Sidney Iwander, who's this crazed, like 9-year-old boy inside of a middle-aged man, he said, go out with a bang, go out with this the big episode, or multi-parter. And so, okay, we wrote it, and we're going to end up with 5 of the X-Men leaving, Xavier and Scott and Jean and Storm and Jubilee, and 4 new people that had been part of the big adventure stay. And it was Bishop and Shard and Psylocke and Archangel. And so that was going to be kind of the goodbye to the series. Oh, well, we had this group of X-Men. Now, if there's another show somewhere, it'll be this group of X-Men. And that was a fun thing to do. And we got a call after we'd finished the entire script saying, oops, we think we may need to do a few more episodes.
A few more episodes. But not 13.
So don't have 5 people leave, don't have 4 new people come in. Put everybody back. But keep the same story, but put everybody back. And so that was a little frustrating, but you're a professional writer, and they're being nice enough to employ you. So we did what we could.
And then for those final episodes, if you go back and watch what is season 5, look, we can go on for hours about how, budget was cut. People were let go right and left. It was all a real struggle. But and the animation fell off a cliff. But there were still really keen people working on it. And if you go back and see and include, especially for X-Men 97, The episode Old Soldiers with Captain America was written by Len Wein, who was one of the co-creators of Wolverine
in the comics.
And he'd written a few, this was his fourth, I think, for
Yeah.
the show. And he said, you asked him, well, you want to come back and do one more for the last season? I'll do it if I can do it with Captain America. We hadn't been allowed any Marvel other characters.
Marvel had just gone through bankruptcy, and they didn't own the rights to lots of their characters. So
That's
they
right.
actually had to have the attorneys call and find out whoever had the rights and, you know, send them a check to allow that to happen. But
Len Wein made it happen.
Since it was Len, they got it to happen, and it was nice.
So Old Soldiers, I think, is a really special episode. And the very last one, Graduation Day, you and I can each still get choked up watching it as a culmination of that show and hearing Professor Xavier say his goodbyes to each of them. It's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it still makes my heart hurt in a good way, written by Jim Krieg. I mean, it just, again, the animation fell off a cliff, but the stories were still, I think, very strong.
Very strong, very strong. That because they re-showed that clip in the new animation adverts, and it just pulls on your heartstrings, and you're like, oh, you're bringing it all back, and it all comes flooding back, and that must have been amazing because you get to work with so many creative individuals, and me being a creative myself, that must be such a visceral process of different creatives in one room trying to put these characters and stories together. Were there any like great memories of things going out of hand a little bit?
Yeah,
How much time do you have? That's the question.
A few times, quite simply, the first year before the show was successful, because it takes so long to animate a show back in the old days when everything was hand painted.
Hand painted overseas.
There was a lot of second thinking and anxiety and questions like, you sure you want it to be this adult? You sure, you know, oh, this is way too dark for children? Are the advertisers going to flee? You know, shouldn't this be something different? Look at the early Stan Lee ones in the 63, 64. That's a bunch of teenagers running around having fun. That's not what this show is at all. So lots of those questions back and forth. And interestingly, I think the majority of the creative people on the show didn't second guess. We all pretty much knew once we looked over the 30-year history of the books. Oh, the sweet spot for us was the Chris Claremont era, adult, you know, 70s, 80s. That was the place where the team really came into its own, and that was the tone and focus that we liked. So that was the team you chose. As a team, we chose
players from that time,
and so we all believed in it. There's great doubting, and we had to defend it constantly, and we had worries because we've been on other shows where, say, people that had money in the show or a network or a production executive would say, no, we need to change all this, and we didn't have the power or the will to resist. And in this case, everybody just put their foot down and said, look, you can fire me if you don't like the show, but we're not changing it to, you know, we're not making it younger. We're not doing whatever it is you're suggesting today. We've thought it through and we know exactly what the show should be. So just please trust us. And that's not easy before someone has seen, because you never know if a show is going to grab people or not, or if it's going to connect. And so it shows it's a sneak preview in October, sneak preview in November. People seem to like it. And then it shows on in January of '93, and it's a huge hit. And, you know, a week later, for the next 4 years, there are no questions. You know, they're just they're minor details. You want to move this around, but all the major creative questions fly out the window when everyone's making money.
I want to mention, though, being in a room with a bunch of creatives and spitballing ideas, and oh my God, that's magic. No, what happened was
we didn't do that.
You were tapped in that fateful meeting to be the showrunner, story editor guy, and Markings would be like your head writer. And there was so little money in the budget. There were no offices.
Yeah, there were no offices. There were no staff salaries. Each of the writers that eventually were used, and we used 20 different ones over the 5 years, over the 76 episodes, 20 different people. there were no staff salary, so I couldn't retain a writer. I couldn't say, look, we'll give you a certain amount of money for 6 months if you'll stay and do 6 episodes for me. It was here's a commitment to do 1 episode.
Mhm.
And a writer would say, like Julia would say, my friend Michael, he would come in, he would do that episode, working back and forth with me. No writer's room, no contributions from 15 other people. The contributions came in where the writer and I would agree on what a premise was, and we would then pitch that to Marvel, the Fox Network, to the art people like Larry Houston, and production peoples at Groz Entertainment. It'd be 5 or 6 folks that would get that maybe 1-page premise. And if everybody was kind of agreed on that, they could all give notes on that. If they agreed, okay, we're going forward with this, they'd all weigh in on that. And I would organize, okay, well, we've got 11 different suggestions here. 6 of them are contradictory. This we could kind of do this one, but we couldn't go quite that far. So I would then have to contact all of the people giving notes and say, well, we were able to do half of the ones you suggested. But we can't do this one for this reason. So I was doing a lot of faxing. We didn't have internet. It was before the internet.
Yes.
There's no email. But so I would then coordinate everyone's interest, hand that back, polish it up with all that in it, hand it back to the writer and say, okay, now write a 10-page outline of this. He would do that. So it's basically the writer and I did the script together, and that was a kind of a one-on-one on each thing. But none of the other writers would be helping him or her, like Julia did hers all by herself.
To paint the picture, you and the writer, and typically Mark Edens, because he was over all the time, and me, because I lived there, it was at our dining room table in our first home. That was the writer's room, was yellow legal pads, photocopies of the various X-Men materials that Larry Houston on the art side had sent over to you, so you could be catching up on this stuff.
And my 17-pound laptop.
Yeah, about that.
So
Dining room table, that's where.
And you couldn't even really send the files through the internet. It's really very primitive. There was really an awkward way that you could use message boards, and it would take over an hour to send a little tiny, a few K file. But what usually happened is the writers would say, write a script, a 40-page script. They put it on a floppy disk. I'd drive it over to my house. That was how we would communicate again. And one guy did it after the earthquake in '94.
Brooks Hotel and the Northridge earthquake.
He drove through the rubble.
Wow.
Because we had a deadline, and he brought the floppy with the script on it to our house.
Good on you. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
You don't think about the hard work that you guys went through and what a production like this has to go through. But back then in the 90s, that's like, the listeners right here are getting gold at the moment, because it is hard work, guys. Like, trust me, putting shows together it's not an easy thing. So like to that certain level that somebody's driving through rubble to get that floppy disk there, that's a mission impossible there.
Yeah.
And Marvel's own offices were based in New York at the time. And I say that because the production side of it was in Los Angeles. And if you needed to communicate, or if Marvel, the comic book folks, wanted to communicate with you, it was all faxes. There was a 3-hour time difference. Their offices closed Friday afternoons. They didn't open again till Monday mornings. And cell phones were not ubiquitous.
Most people didn't have cell phones. So it just was a case of, oh, gee, we'll have to wait till Monday to find out if we can do this or not. But they were nice people. They were very small at the time. Marvel was. It's hard to imagine, and they were so frantically busy just trying to keep their head up above water financially.
That's right.
And produce their comic books with the small staff they had, that for probably the only time in history, they were pretty much hands off with us. It was Fox's show, and as long as we stayed pretty true to the characters and the world, they were just saying, fine, you're giving us a fee for being able to do this. We'll read your scripts, and if something jumps out, we'll give you a red flag notice, but go with God. Just do your show, and we hope we like it. And they ended up of course, loving it, and we loved working with them because they were very supportive. But it was the opposite of what it would be today, where
The opposite of what it is today.
yeah, with a Marvel show where they would be anxious about every detail and
That's right.
micromanaging every moment of every production they're doing because they have a greater they have all these other interests. We were pretty much left alone in the garage to build our show.
It's amazing. Because you think about the larger scale it is now when it comes to even writing a comic book, to how many decision makers are in there, and to what you kind of had a bit of creative freedom, which is unheard of now because I could draw a comic book and it's my decision. I'll go through it. I'll write the story and then it's up to me. But if I had a larger entity looking after it, that changes the whole concept of what creating freedom was. So you guys got to have that a little bit, which is quite nice to hear.
Yeah. And at the same time, we have a certain little bit of envy for our folks, the young people that are doing the new show that have 5 times the budget and 5 times the time, and have these spectacular tools at their disposal.
We couldn't dream. We hadn't dreamt of them. They couldn't exist.
And
then.
so we are continually amazed with how beautiful they make the new show look and how flawless. I mean, we have jokes that we'd work for 7 months on a show, a month and a half on the script, a month and a half on the storyboard, 4 months on the animation, and it would be recorded, and we'd get it together, and it would get delivered to us maybe 10 days before it was going to show on the air, though from Korea. So if there were 37 errors in it, there might be time to fix 20 of them.
Maybe.
And then boom, it would go on the air. And if there was something they didn't have time to fix, they'd trim it out, or they'd hope you didn't notice. And that was the level of quality control and depth of perfectionism that we had at our disposal at the time.
But we need to call out again, the president of Fox Kids, Margaret Lesh, was the woman who, when she became president of Fox Kids, she'd come over from Marvel Productions and she said, "We're making an X-Men show." So that was on her to carry this forward. And with Will Mineo and Larry Houston, who were huge X-Men fans of the books, we can tell, comic books don't tell a story in a book. Comic books can, build on a story. So the idea of continuing some of the stories was very daring back then.
Very much Will's idea, and we writers loved it.
Oh my God.
But he just thought, look, if you want this to feel like a comic book, let us connect the stories. And Margaret said yes at great expense.
Great expense.
Because, as we discovered, episode 3 comes back and
it's not viewable.
It's just,
you can't watch it.
The problems are so bad, we can't show it for a month. It's going to take that long to fix it. It means you have to show repeats 3 or 4
It means
weeks.
you can't show episode 4, which is ready.
Yeah.
You can't swap them.
And that's a major reason they never allowed animation to be connected, because they just said, we don't know what we're going to get and we can't delay. And well, she did, and she delayed, and that's the reason we ended up premiering in January rather than September as we'd originally planned.
Because episode 3 came back and they couldn't use it. So she came up with what I thought it was a genius idea, was the first 2 parters, Night of the Sentinels part 1 and 2. It was her idea, okay, to all her affiliates, look, I won't have this new show for you.
In September.
However, but if we air it as a primetime special, then we can generate a wider fan base interest.
As a sneak preview, a sneak peek.
Yeah, and then we'll roll it out in January. So, however, it ended up airing on Halloween night here in the US, October 31st. And I'm going, oh my God, that's the only night kids are not going to be home. What the hey? But the ratings for that
were solid.
Were solid.
Wow.
So then in November, okay, Fox Kids take over primetime. What do you want to see on primetime? And
all you guys wrote in and said, we want the X-Men again.
So X-Men ran
awesome.
Again. Same 2 parts, ratings through the roof. So when it rolled out in January, it was the news show.
It was a new show, and we've been teasing it a little for a couple months. And so I think it really helped.
And the ratings
that it was delayed.
And the ratings were through the roof and never looked back. So again, a lot of things happened accidentally.
But that ended up to be good luck.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The way the universe works, right?
It's
Oh my God.
true.
The way the universe works, it speaks to us in different ways and does things in different ways, but amazing. It captured lightning in a bottle. Those for the first two episodes was like, anybody who was not a fan and anybody like myself who is a fan, I still remember me and my brothers sitting in the front room Saturday morning to watch that in the UK, and you know we still watch it to this day together. Everybody lives abroad now, but whenever we do come together, it's it's X-Men. It's what brought us together. A little backstory about what I do is that my uncle used to be a comic book artist, and he introduced me to the first one was Days of Future Past and Chris Claremont's story, and it was I don't know how these characters captured me in that way until the animation did it, and I was like, oh my God, like you guys picked some amazing stories. You're talking about the Phoenix Saga, the Dark Phoenix Saga, and like how did you get to the point where you're saying, I'm gonna pick these stories out and turn these into animation?
The nice thing is if you look back at each individual episode, and I still feel this way, there is such fidelity to the X-Men books, the
Hmm.
X-Men comic books, but there aren't that many that are exact,
Adaptation.
adaptations.
Adaptations, yeah.
I got to work on, I wrote Days of Future Past Part 1 for the first 13. And it's one of those, again, me being, I say the arrogance of ignorance. It's like, oh, okay, this is one of Marvel's crown jewels. Okay, but you can't use Kitty Pryde.
Hmm.
Okay, all right. And someone physically has to go back in time. Okay,
Well,
all right.
that was my decision.
Right, no, but it was necessary.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I would say thought to make the show work better as a show. But to answer your question, there are two kinds of people that would write for X-Men. One were intense fanboys that had memorized every issue and had a real agenda. Well, if
Hmm.
on my show I do issues 13, 107, and da da da, and on the other side were those of us that literally had never picked up an X-Men book before we started the series.
Yeah.
So we were just looking for the most dramatic character moments for each of our
Mhm.
lead characters that we could and build shows around them. So the way it would start was with the exception of 3 or 4, like the Phoenix Saga and Days of Future Past, we would say, okay, I want to write uh, uh, a rogue story. What's the most dramatic thing could happen to her if she were given the opportunity to lose her powers so she could touch people? That would be really dramatic for her. Okay, let's build a story around that and pick some villains that would make that believable and make that evil and make that work for her. But
Mhm.
let her have that moment of temptation. I'm going to leave the X-Men. I'm going to give up my powers. It's like I'm going to pass for human now. I'm going to give up everything that had meant something to me, and then decides against it in the middle of it and discovers that the person offering that was frauding defrauding her. So bits and pieces of that two-parter may have certainly pulled characters from the X-Men world, but in that episode, The Cure, it wasn't an adaptation of a comic book. It was okay. There was someone might say, well, there's a scene in one of the books where Apocalypse reveals himself. Okay, well, let's use that for 10 seconds here in the second part of the story. But so we were using the books more as reference books
Hmm.
and getting a kernel of our story around our current character, building it fresh and picking stuff so that by the time we were done making a 40-page script, there would be lots of stuff that people that loved the books could recognize bits and pieces, but it would be our original TV story because TV story is a little different from, I'm not sure that we could write great comic books. I'd like to think we could try, but it's a little bit different muscle, a little different method of storytelling. I
Hmm.
mean, you can kind of linger over a beautiful page or two in a comic book and kind of go back over it. And TV is very linear; it just blasts through, and you have to kind of keep the music going and
That's
not
right.
pause. So in that way, it ended up being that we stayed really close to the spirit of the books, but rarely directly adapted them.
Hmm. No, I think that's important. I think what most of the listeners will say is, and I usually have this argument a lot, is adapting a book or a comic book onto animation or live adaptation, that it won't translate well. It may not translate well when it comes to animation and being live action. Certain things will change to make the script work. So it's important that the creative process, that yes, we'll take, as you said, you take little things that are going to remind people of, oh my God, I remember that moment, but putting it into different news stories. And it's what gives it a fresh take, I would say. And you definitely did that with the X-Men. So you with like Days of Future Past and the Phoenix Saga, you guys picked out on key moments, but then you still made it your own, which is amazing. But sorry, as I continue, did you guys have, well, who are your favorite X-Men?
As one of the writers on the show,
Yeah.
and as a hopeless romantic, it's Beast. It's Hank McCoy.
Hank McCoy.
Because as a writer, it's like he's the smartest guy in the room. So getting to write for him, you get to pretend you're the smartest person in the room. But again, of the whole team that became the X-Men team for the animated series, he is the one who cannot walk down the street without getting pointed at or whispered about, oh my God, there's a blue mutant over there. You know, he's the most obviously other. And yet in his own way, I'm not going to say at peace, but he carries that with him with a real grace and elegance. And boy, George Buza, the voice for Beast from the original series and now on X-Men 97. Oh, I think he just has done such a phenomenal job. And you made it so much fun for us as writers on it. Beast's call to action. It wasn't like into the breach, every time something happened, it was
some obscure poetic reference.
Yeah.
And that was just a random thought when we were doing the pilot script and they were breaking into this place and Beast needed to say something, and all of us had worked on simpler action cartoons before, and a lot of them would have calls to action like "Cowabunga."
Yes.
And so Beast wouldn't say something that juvenile. He'd have a much deeper, obscure thought in mind, and so. I love him being able to be kind of bemused in the middle of tense situations. That just seemed to be something that he did. It's almost Spock-like in his abilities.
That's right.
And so we wrote that, and we looked through some dusty old, thesauruses.
Bartlett's Book of Quotations.
Yeah. So it's not like the writing staff was that erudite, but we knew all these great quotes that would fit. We'd think, oh, his feet are having to go over some live wires here. Is there a funny quote from 300 years ago about feet? And there was. so that was the attitude that we'd give Beast things that only Beast would have read.
Oh,
and
so cool.
The thought was in my head and it just flew out. But the idea of and we didn't have the internet, so literally it was.
Yeah, so we couldn't Google.
Wow, that's right. Yep.
We couldn't Google feet in action. We had to bring out the books. Yes. Well, another thing about the characters, everyone got together, Marvel and Fox and Saban, everybody, and said, okay, who are going to be the main characters?
Right.
Because everyone had a little bit of an interest, and everyone decided, well, it's got to be Jean and Scott because they're core. Wolverine's the most popular character in the planet. Okay, he's got to be in it. We need a kid, so we tried with Kitty Pryde a couple of years ago. It didn't work. Let's use Jubilee. She's new. Okay, there's 4. And I think everyone agreed on Rogue. So we were up to about 5 characters. And then they said, well, everybody else, and this included Xavier and Jean Grey and Beast. They said Gambit. He's a cool new guy. He's different. So we were up to maybe 5 characters. The other ones were like, use them if you can. If you can't, no big deal. And that's why Beast was in jail.
Yes.
After the first episode, as first story, because we weren't going to see him for 5 or 6 episodes because he wasn't listed when we were writing it out at first as a core teammate.
Right.
But as we wrote the first season, every chance we got, we kept on going back to Beast because he was so much fun to write, and he had a voice like nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the end of the 13, we looked at each other. Well, of course he's part of the main crew. I mean, we can't not tell stories. We can't tell stories without him. He's too important. And the same with Xavier, and the same with Jean. They each were needed as the stories evolved in ways that we looked back and said, oh, they were core people from the get-go. But we hadn't decided that on day one. They worked their way into the stories.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Great character. Beast is absolutely awesome, and he does bring this certain elegance to the team, which is it's really nice. He does still play a big part, and even in the comic books, he plays still such a crucial part of the X-Men team. With the characters that you guys brought together on here, you guys introduced somebody new to the team, which Morph. How did that come about?
All right, before you even get started on this, let me jump in and say, Fox president Margaret Lesh was willing to, she was going to make the show happen, and she wanted it to be intelligent and take chances and deal with emotions, deal with honest emotions,
and bend and break rules for kids programming that nobody else had done before.
And her right-hand guy, Eric's mentioned him, Sydney Iwaner, was the guy. Back then, we didn't have nifty lightweight earbud phones. I had to get you a set like this for your phone, so you could, because he would be on the phone with you
for 6 hours.
Notes.
Wow.
But then a person who deserves as much credit is the woman who was in charge of broadcast standards and practices at Fox Kids. She was a censor, and her name was Avery Coburn.
And whatever she said was law.
Absolute law.
If the X-Men could never raise their voice to each other, that would be the rule for 79 episodes. End of discussion. If they could never
say the word kill,
if they could never hit a bad guy, they could never hit a bad guy. It's just, she was in charge. But luckily, she had a more adult taste and she liked the books.
Wow.
She respected the books. So we were 3/4 of the way there. And this all comes about because Julia was, the first day Mark and I are at our dining room table trying to lay out 13 episodes. And Mark and I looked at each other, and one of us said to the other one, well, in the first story, we got to kill somebody. We've got to show that there are consequences to being an X-Men, that it's not pretend fighting. It's not fun violence. It's horrifying, grief-filled violence that happens to these people if they're not careful and they don't back each other up and they're not there for each other. So we looked around and said, we asked Larry Houston, who knew the comic books better. Okay, who in 30 years of comics has sacrificed himself for the good of the X-Men, has died helping the X-Men? And he gave me a list of 4 or 5. On the top was Thunderbird, was a Native American character.
That's right.
So when we wrote the pilot, it was Thunderbird. It wasn't Morph. It was Thunderbird, and there's some fun things about that as well. But so we wrote that up. We handed it in. Everybody looked at it, and some executive somewhere looked and said, "Wait a minute. We need to be a little sensitive here. You guys have one Native American character that you're going to have that Marvel has for this group, and you're going to kill him in the first story. Great. I mean, how does that look?" They said, "Okay, fine. We're doing this as a heroic sacrifice. We've got 3 or 4 others to pick from." So we looked, and they said, and Changeling, character named Changeling, was there, who sacrificed himself to save Professor X, in 1980. And so we used him, and that's the design of Morph is precisely the book's design of Changeling. And we wrote him as Changeling. He was in the dialogue. And then we got a note from the lawyers saying, "Wait a minute, DC has a character named Changeling, so this is going to get us a lawsuit." And we said, "But Marvel has one too, and theirs was first. It doesn't matter. We're not going to complicate our lives. Pick another character. Change his name. You can keep the image. They own the image, but so keep Changeling." So I just changed his name to Morph, and so that's it. That's how Morph came about. To be killed and to stay killed. And then Julia will tell you what happened.
But Avery Coburn understood.
And she got it.
She understood what you were doing.
It took a week or two of faxes back and forth, her saying, look, I'm not sure I should let you do this. I said, well, we're not going to be gratuitous. She said, fine, well, I've got to have rules. It has to be off screen. Okay, no blood, no
violence.
no screaming, no, so she had a long list of rules about how it had to happen, but in the end, she said, yes, you could have a heroic sacrifice in the first story. So that was so cool, and we felt so vindicated. And the show went well, and I swear 90% of the fans that meet us say, well, I was watching and then Morph died and I couldn't believe this new show. And so that's the one thing they have in common. Anywhere on the planet, they saw, and there's this shiver when Morph, and that's what we're trying to do. And it meant, because he meant so much to everybody, we set him up meaning something to everybody in the team. And when he died, they all grieved.
So then you get the phone call.
Then the first show seasons they hit, and we got a call saying, we want you to do another season. And Sydney, the Fox executives on the line, said, but I've got some bad news for you. And I said, what's that? I said, well, we did a focus group.
Never do a focus group.
With a room full of 9-year-olds, and they all, they watched a few episodes, and they said, well, who's your favorite character of all the X-Men? And by a landslide, it was Morph.
Wow.
So he said, look, I know you went to all that trouble. You spent a month getting the permission to kill Morph. Can you please, it was off screen, can you please bring him back? They do it in the comics all the time. And we said, oh.
Sorry about that.
So we said, okay. And that's why he came back. And begrudgingly, but then we thought, okay, well, cool. If we have to bring him back and ruin all this that we worked so hard for, let's do something. Let's have some, not fun, but let's have some character stuff with him. Let's make him PTSD. Let's make him resentful and attack his old friends, and they won't be ready for it. And he's perfectly set up to insinuate himself in the whole team and just blow it up emotionally. And so that gave us 3 or 4 episodes of some really good Morph scenes that we would never have had.
Definitely. I mean, it's interesting that you brought the PTSD into an animation like this. You guys introduced quite a lot of hard-hitting adult stuff into here as a child to make you think, oh my God, he did go through so much. He suffered so much, and what Sinister put him through. And it's like, as a kid, yes, it was hard-hitting, and we did want him back after that first episode. So to get him back in season 2 was like a delight, but then realizing the pain he had gone through. You guys did the writing was intense, guys, like insanely touching moments, hard moments, and you brought a depth, but you brought depth to these characters that many of us already love, but to see it visually, it changes your concept sometimes on this character. But you did that with Morph with the PTSD was absolutely brilliant. That was hard-hitting stuff.
2 things. Margaret Lesh, her marching orders were, this is not a Saturday morning half-hour kid show. You treat this as an hour-length primetime drama. That's what you need to aim for here. And had never been given those marching orders before working in children's animation. It was oh my God, we get to play in the playground now.
So liberating for us as writers, because 9 out of 10 notes we got in the past when we were working on other shows, you're trying to make this too adult, dumb it down,
Kids aren't gonna follow.
Make it younger. Yeah, no 9-year-old's going to understand, the emotional drama that you're trying to write here. Make it simpler. And so the executives, the writers, the artists, the performers had all probably struggled with that for 10 years and wished they could push a kid's show and make it more intense. And so here are these executives looking at us and say, do it. Not only do it, but do it more. And so, what a gift that was.
And then in the world of animation back in 1992, 93, the way everything's happening all at once. So it had been, Warpath had been drafted into the first rough passes of the script. And then
you mean Thunderbird?
I'm sorry, Thunderbird. And he's out of it, but they'd already designed Thunderbird, but he has a twin brother named Warpath. So if you look at the final credits and the opening credits as the 2 teams are charging at each other,
There's Warpath.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is just absolutely nickels is pennies. Is like, look, we've got to design the opening credits like over the weekend. We've got to draw it as fast as we can. We already have all the character designs for Thunderbird. Just put a different costume on him, and we can throw him in with the villains.
It's never explained.
And that'll save us. That'll save us 3 hours of drawing. Hurry, quick, now. Yeah.
That's insane because me and my brothers always noticed that. We're like, oh, what is he doing on that side? What happened? What's going
Now
on
you
here?
know. Now you know.
That's amazing. Gonna ask about the animation style and it sounds like you guys went through a lot because it was a long process. Traditional art I'll always love because I still love paper and pencil, but the agony of waiting a couple of months to see the footage once you've done the script and the voiceovers and things, what was that process like for you once you've seen it?
I'm going to say it was really, that was a challenge more for Larry Houston and Will Mineo because they were on the art side. And again, you were working at a dining room table.
Yeah.
We weren't all in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, and it was so everything was so fast and overlapped in terms of us by the time we'd finished the say 13 episodes, we would start seeing episodes 1, 2, and 3 coming back in rough animation. So it took enough months to get the 13 done that it overlapped a little bit. But part of it, we got to see it come to life in bits. Like we would write the script, we'd send it off. They would record it in Toronto, all these wonderful
the voice talent, right?
in Canada, and so we'd get that back, and we'd be able to give notes on that. And snail mail audio cassette.
Wow.
Yeah, here you go. Listen to this. And so, okay, we listened to that. So that was step one to where, okay, we'd imagined this 22-minute story in our head. We'd imagined a pace. We'd imagined what the emotions would feel like between the characters in each one of these moments. And then we'd hear it alive from the actors' voices. Just, oh, it's wonderful. He did even more than I thought. Or, they kind of missed what I intended here. Maybe they could try it again. We get the first real installment on what we'd written and what we thought we'd written. And usually they were at least 80% on what was in our heads, if not more. So that and as we went along, the excellent voice director and the team would be better and better and better in understanding, intuiting what we meant by our directions. And then we'd get the storyboards, maybe a month after we heard the voices, and we'd see all the emotions that the artists had drawn into the boards
by hand.
So we'd get it'd be about 900 drawings.
Wow.
300 pages of 3 drawings each going across, and with all the action indicated. But the best part was seeing them, say catching Beast's grief or Professor Xavier's excitement or whatever it was, that trying to and see the artist capture that in these. But these are very rough. These just sketched storyboards because they didn't have time to do 900 beautiful detailed comic book panels. They just had to indicate exactly where the people were and what they looked. So, but in any case, so we get that. So by the time it all sent over for the 3 or 4 months of animation, we would have heard it and we would have seen it laid out in the storyboards. And we pretty much knew if that we were on the right page. At least we didn't know if something was going to be magical, perhaps, but we knew that we hadn't screwed up a scene or we hadn't left something hanging, or we just knew structurally, okay, everything's in place. Now let's hope that when we put it together, it'll move the way we imagine it's going to move.
Now, the biggest problem I think that occurred over the run of the show, and thank God the internet didn't exist, because people would have gone online and lost their minds, but was it, I'm thinking of No Mutant is an Island, that episode. There's an episode that an episode about Scott being so grief-stricken at the loss of Jean over the course of
Yeah, right after Phoenix. They think,
Phoenix
Yes.
Saga.
they think she's dead.
She's
The
dead.
next episode is supposed to be
No Mutant is an Island.
No Mutant is an Island. They're having a memorial for her and remembering her,
Out on the lawn.
and he's so heartbroken that he leaves the X-Men, and he's gone. He goes back to his orphanage, and he comes, and then realizes by the end of the episode, well, I guess he needs to stay in X-Men. And the end of the episode, we have some sense that maybe she's still alive. So that is a transition episode to bringing Jean back.
Mhm.
Well, that episode and another one, a Mojo one, I think,
Yes.
were produced so poorly because they were they needed so much production and so fast. They were going to secondary places to get it produced.
Studios.
Studios,
Wow.
either
Okay.
time or money or just quantity, that they got those 2 episodes back and they were terrible. And we told them, well, you have to redo, 80% of this.
Mhm.
And the new studio said, no, we don't. And so there's a big fight for about a year and a half. And
Wow.
finally they redid it. And so No
2
Mutant
years.
is an Island and another episode premiered 2 years late. And so if you were a kid and you were watching the Phoenix Saga, the next weekend, there's Jean.
Oh.
No explanation, no mourning, no, how she got back, how she didn't go into the sun, just boom. Okay. So luckily now, 30 years later, and we kept on calling, we tried to call or tell Fox, or look, you've got them in the wrong, it was the wrong order coming out of production. You've got them in the wrong order on the DVD set, and we put it in the first book, saying, look, here's the proper order. This one needs to come after that one. Did it make sense? We put it in the other book. And so even Disney Plus premiered and stuff was out of order. It was like,
That's right. Yes, we noticed that as well.
3 things were out of order. So we wrote them. I said, isn't there somebody there that could just take the hour and a half and move, 3 of the episodes into the proper place? Finally, somebody did it. And so now they're in the right order and it makes sense. But yeah, that was animation.
But to give props, I don't know if we've mentioned her yet, Stephanie Graziano was the head president of Graz Entertainment, which was the production company that handled handled the artist side of things. And I literally had to fly back and forth a couple times to Korea to deal with these kinds of problems and
bring them over here and walk them through it all.
Wow.
And again, no
fight
internet.
for it and say, look, no, you're not going to get your
This
check
is
for your
not
work.
good.
You're not going to get paid till, and oh no, it looks the same as the other stuff. No. You're coming to our offices and we're going to put one beside the other and we'll show you every single thing that you did wrong.
2 years.
And yeah, 2 years of that back and forth fighting, and she got them to fix it.
So Stephanie Graziano deserves all credit.
Oh, brilliant.
I want to shout out one more. Well, everyone deserves a shout out, but part of I think some of the charm of X-Men is that because it's multi-episodic and some of them are multi-parters, the previously on X-Men, that came about because the editor for the show, Sharon Janis, understood what the show was trying to do. And she said, what if I, to her powers that be, what if I craft, let's look, a reminder,
30, 40 second thing.
Something to tag at the beginning of the show. So, oh, this is, okay, now I know where I am. Completely shot down. But she said, but if you let me do that, that's 20 to 30 seconds worth of animation. You don't have
40,
to do 40 because I'm reusing the old animation. Oh, well, in that case, go with God.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And it was also an answer. We got a lot of pushback at first saying this is way too complicated to show for kids. Not only is it too complicated with all this mutant stuff and all these characters, but you have these connected stories. They're not going to remember from week to week what happened the last week. This is going to be such a confusion for children. And that was, Sharon also said, okay, besides saving you 40 seconds of animation money, this will remind them. And I'll do it specifically to set up the new episode. This will remind them what's happened before and they can connect with it. It's not like this has never been done. It's been done in prime time. And they say, oh, okay, we get it. This makes us feel a little more comfortable about letting you do connected stories.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. This segues really well into the books, guys. Like when you guys put the books together, what was the process? What made you say, I'm gonna get this done. It needs to get out there in the world, which we
She-
absolutely love. Where is my one?
Oh, you've got them there?
Where is it gone? Here we go. So yeah, so previously on X-Men is on my other bookshop, but yes, I've
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Okay.
wow, thank you for that.
Oh,
Thank
so
you.
you
no,
know
you're
about that.
welcome.
So previously was all was her nagging and my doing. It was
It was 2015.
yeah, it was just like January 2015. And she says, look, the show's not playing anywhere here. It may be dribbling around still around.
The rights are all over the place.
Yeah.
There's no studio in charge of it.
Yeah. And it's
Batman was having an
yeah,
anniversary.
yeah. And you know, so there's certain series like Star Trek has Paramount forever. They have a lifelong interest in promoting it and reminding people what it was and maybe doing new series. And so they have a lifelong legacy to maintain with Star Trek. Warner Brothers has the same thing with Batman.
Yeah.
There's nobody that had that with X-Men because we were four little companies, you know, Fox and Marvel going bankrupt and
Saban and Graz.
Saban and Graz, and these that all threw a little bit of money together and patched this thing together. And so as soon as the show was done, there was nobody with an interest in ever remembering it or going back to
Or
it
spending an effort to make.
or doing anything more with characters. Okay,
Yeah.
they made Marvel made and Fox made the movies, but we discovered in 2014, 2015, the rights were still separate. You know, Saban, I think, had music rights, and Fox, 20th Century Fox, had the TV animation rights, whatever, and Marvel had some rights. So Disney bought Marvel and Disney bought Fox, and so suddenly the rights came together.
But you're jumping
But
ahead.
yeah, I'm jumping ahead. So
Yeah,
in 2015, they hadn't yet.
Yeah.
And so we called up to Marvel and got some third level guy and he said, you know, we don't have the rights for that. We wouldn't be interested in supporting you and, you know, goodbye. So we did this on our own.
We had the old
Wow.
scripts and the old storyboards.
We had all the old,
above our garage.
Yeah, up in storage, up in filing cabinets above the garage. And so I called up and interviewed all the cast and crew.
Whom we had never met in person.
Yeah,
They're
we'd
all
never met the
from-
cast.
Wow.
Yeah, we just and so that was great fun. Yeah, hi George. Yeah. You remember all those beast lines that you got? This was my gig, man. Oh, let's talk. Okay, so interviewed all of them on the phone. Interviewed writers here in LA, artists here in LA, the executives here, and a few other folks that were like 36 people
Margaret Lesh, Sydney, I want.
Yeah, all those folks, and I had sat down and kind of did the oral, my personal history. Okay, here's what happened on day one, and then the first season had these struggles, and the second season had these struggles, and then laid out details about the story, and put like one image from a storyboard on each. Yeah, okay, so
Fair use legally.
it's called in U.S. law you can do that. I can't publish a storyboard and sell it, but it's like taking a paragraph out of a novel and saying, look at how Victor Hugo writes. And that's okay. You can do that as a reference point. So I was able to do that in this book. And it was just she just said, look, if you don't do this, nobody else on the planet has all this stuff together.
That's true.
And the history will not get written down. It'll all be forgotten. And even if this, make us like $5, that's not the point. The point is we get to get it all together and it'll be great fun. And it was, and it got us going to cons because it gave us some, we're not artists. We can't go, say, look at, I'll draw you Wolverine, so we go to cons and we'd lug these books and say, okay, you want to know about your favorite show? We'll sell you a book. And it gave us an intro to start doing panels and having tables at Comic Cons.
Because we hadn't.
Yeah, so it came out in 2017. So we started basically then. We did, I think, one that fall and one that February 8th. And then we got a booker and started doing, one a month. And so it's been
great guy, Michael Perez, in terms of
wonderful guy. So that opened up this whole new world. And then Julia will tell you we got a not very, a kind of scary letter.
Email.
I'm sorry, email from Marvel.
The vice president in charge of global licensing.
Yeah.
And I just see that in the email.
But they're thinking, okay, they're going to slap our wrist over doing the book without their permission.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that. So I called the guy I said, oh, no, no, no. Everybody in office loves your book. It's just, we just found out we got the rights back. So this would have been 2018.
Yeah, I think
Wow.
so.
2019, this would have been. We got the rights back and we want to do, you couldn't use any of all the beautiful artwork before. So we wanted to do a beautiful artwork book to complement the book you've done. So we did the second book with Marvel.
Yeah.
And that's
amazing.
that's why it looks so beautiful, and it's 4 pounds, and it's got
It's a
And-
beautiful piece.
Oh, there
It's
you
a
go, right
beautiful
there.
piece.
Larry Houston and Rick Hoberg from the original series and did the original artwork on the front and back of the book. And since you got it, and thank you for that. We got to do some like Indiana Jones
Amazing.
diving with Larry
Yeah,
Houston and
yeah.
his 3 different storage sheds,
yeah.
because this stuff was not computerized.
because
Wow.
yeah,
you
most
know.
of the stuff we had to dig through cardboard boxes to find most of the stuff in the
Yeah.
book. Some from an art gallery, but a lot of it in people's
Mark Lewis and Dan Biesenmeyer.
Two of the artists were smart enough to have started to digitize their design work.
And that was their own private collection stuff.
Yeah,
That wasn't anything that was happening in
and
the
so
show.
Marvel itself didn't have, they had stuff like comic book covers
Yeah.
and stuff from merchandising, and so they have things like that. But the cells and the character designs, all that stuff were stuff we just had to find.
Yeah.
It's
gone.
the writing of that was the easy part. The digging, the finding stuff was the hard part.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's beautiful. Both books are amazing. They give you the deep history of putting this together. The art and making of this, like this is cover to cover. I still draw these characters to this day. So to see it all in this beautiful book, it was amazing. So guys, just to let you know, anybody who's listening or watching this, the links are in my description. If you're a fan, it's a must have. It is one of those must have. It looks amazing on like it's my child. I'm 11 years old every time I pick this up.
Okay, let me show you a fun Easter egg of an Easter egg inside the book.
Cool.
If you open the book up to the cover page, is the black and gold.
Yeah.
Right there.
Very first page.
And it's the opening title sequence that Larry Houston managed to draft over the course of roughly a weekend. And you go down to the last number
To
there.
the bottom corner on the right.
Beast, it goes from Beast, and then it goes to Gambit's his cards.
His aces.
If you look at the
Ooh.
aces, the pip for the ace of spades is upside down. We didn't catch that until we're putting this book together.
Until after the book was
Guys.
produced.
Right there.
Yeah.
And so we called Larry Houston and said, we hadn't noticed this before. Is this like an overseas error? And he goes, oh, it's gotta be.
Yeah. Or did you do this on purpose? He says, no, that's a mistake.
It was an error.
And he looked through and he said, oh geez, I did it. I screwed up.
Nice,
Now,
brilliant.
If you're really quick on X-Men 97, when you see Gambit in the opening title sequence, they've upside down the pip in honor in the new one. So that was a magic moment for me when they pointed
I'm
that
gonna
out.
go for it. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna
It's real
definitely
quick, but
freeze frame. I'm gonna be pausing. My wife's gonna
There
be
you
like,
go.
"What are you doing? What are you doing?" Bless her. My wife, when she sees me watch this cartoon with the kids, she's like, "You're a big kid with them," and it's amazing that. Oh my God, it's transcended so well that I get to enjoy this with my kids now. And that's a beautiful moment there because you've got 2 generations now
Yeah.
that are a part of this. Oh, it's amazing.
I'm going to say 3. We have been astonished
Yes,
by
that's
the
right,
folks
yeah.
who come up to us at cons and say, oh, I watched this with my grandmother. I watched this with my father. I watched my older brothers.
And now I watch it with my children.
Oh my God, we just don't start with us.
Can you imagine working at
On
our
your dining room table.
table and then 30 years later having people tell you, I watched this with my father, I watched this with my children, and just knowing that what you did there, I mean, it's too good.
Yeah, we are so fortunate and so grateful. We are so grateful. So grateful.
Oh, bless you guys, because honestly, like the cons must be amazing as well when you go to the Comic Cons and meeting the fans and meeting the people that have indulged this over the years. That must be an overwhelming feeling as well for you guys.
Oh yeah.
I kind of call it our love residuals, because there ain't a lot of residuals in the world of animation. Let me tell you that. Getting to go to these places and getting to talk and being able to listen to the fans. I think a lot of people just want to share with us, with someone what the show has meant to them. And we, good Lord, That means the world to us to
Yeah,
hear it.
and just so you know, the level, the quality of fans that we get, all sorts of people, but with a very snarky internet these days, for the last 7 years, we must have gone to 100 events, and there's not been one snarky question.
No one has ever come up to us or in a panel stood up and asked a question.
Yeah, well, what
and been a
about,
jerk.
how come you screwed this up with it? Whatever, not once has
That's good.
anybody been anything
Amazing.
but thoughtful and respectful and very loving about it. So
Oh,
it's great.
it's the sweetest thing in the world. But I mean, yeah, that's a whole different level. I'm gonna make it my mission, guys, that you guys get to the UK and get to
There
London
you go.
MCM Comic Con. I'm promising that now on the podcast now. I'm gonna get Eric and Julia to London. I'm
Oh
gonna
my
speak to
God.
them. I'm gonna speak to them. I'm gonna speak to them honestly, because it has to be. It's a must because I haven't told anybody that I'm doing this episode, nor have I told my brothers because we do the podcast together. But both my brothers live abroad in a time in, they live in the Middle East, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna surprise you guys. So it's gonna play it's one of my, it's gonna be a good mission, definitely. This has been an absolute pleasure, guys. Honestly, like 12-year-old Kibbs right now is in bits right now. So honestly, absolute pleasure. We can't thank you enough for bringing this show to life because I feel like it's taken a, as you can see, my daughters have run into the room.
Aw.
Bless them. Fully
That's funny.
excited. And but no, absolute pleasure. I can't thank you guys enough for your time, for putting this together. But the last thing I'm gonna kind of leave with was, how have you guys finished this new season of 97?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, we can tell you, we
Yeah.
can't tell you much, but we can tell you.
yeah, it's I think what we've, how many have there been? 7 shown?
No, I believe there've been 8. And so episodes
Yes,
9 and
8, yeah.
episodes 10 are still to air.
Yeah.
So we got to keep our mouths shut, but those 2
Okay.
or more are coming
But
out.
that's it. And then
And then season 2.
season 2, they've already basically
Yes.
written and so they're not sure about the schedule. They don't want to do it too fast. They want to be able to play this for a while, but they've already committed to season 3.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it got such a good reaction from you guys
Oh my God.
that they very, very quickly after the premiere said, "Oh, we're going to do season 3." So
Wow.
It's amazing. And we are right now, all of us on the planet are the only people in the history of humanity who are going to have this once a week drop for the first season. Because as soon as this 10th episode's available, you can just binge the whole thing.
Mhm.
But I have been loving
once a week.
the
What-
once a week reaction and behavior. We're all kids with our bowls of Fruit Loops sitting in front of the TV. The only thing that's missing is a Fox Kids Club kind of ad in between every now and then.
I remember
But
that.
I think that's made it even more special. I love binging. I'm not going to not binging,
Mhm.
but I do believe X-Men the animated series has a special place in people's hearts. You
It's-
started with it at the beginning because you had to wait a week. You
That's
had
right,
to talk
yeah.
to friends about it because you couldn't. Yeah, and most folks you weren't able to like get a VHS machine and just go back and did you see that? Wait, did you see that? Was that, there was a lot of that kind of talk. And I think that was wonderful for fans to
Yeah.
have that kind of interaction with each other
Yeah.
about the show.
Oh.
And if you watch the new series, you and I and Larry Houston, we are listed as consulting producers.
At
Yes.
the very end.
Very end,
Of
and we are very
course.
proud of that. So
That's amazing. No, definitely. Because as you said, I don't think it's a little part you guys did. I think you guys always bring more to the table, but it's no, that must be that's such a great feeling, such a good thing to see this after 32 years and still going so strong. Like,
Yeah.
I can tell you one thing I caught, and I was proud of this because this is my big contribution 30 years later, but one of the X-Men turns to Beast and says, Henry, da 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 da. And I go,
We never
Henry-
called him Henry.
Henry is Henry Gyrich. He's not, Beast is
right.
Hank.
yes,
And I went,
that's
"Oh,
right.
Oh, but with that kind of stuff that we're kind of, trying to be helpful
Little
about.
bits.
Yeah.
No, it's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right, guys. I know you guys have got busy schedules and it's early, well, not early morning, but just past 11 o'clock, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, massive thank you from us in the UK. Massive thank you from us
Oh,
at the Brothers Geek Out podcast.
thank you.
Thank you for your time. And honestly, I'm overwhelmed myself right now, and I'm going to probably cry with my wife later on, telling her I get to speak to to these amazing guys about something that I loved as a child that transcended through years and it's back again. And I'm actually speaking to you guys. I can't thank you guys enough. Absolutely amazing.
Well, it's our pleasure. Kid.
Thank you. And to your brothers, hello, and sorry
No.
we didn't get a chance to chat with you. Hope it's a pleasant surprise.
No, definitely. Thanks again.
Okay.
Thanks. And that's a wrap for today's electrifying episode of the Brothers Geek Out podcast. We hope you've enjoyed diving deep into the realms of geek culture with us. As always, a massive thank you to our incredible guests, Eric and Julia, for joining us today and sharing their insight and passions. It's been an absolute blast. Before we sign off, dear listeners, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on our podcast to stay up to date on our latest episodes and geeky adventures. Your support means the world to us, and we love hearing from you. So until next time, fellow geeks, keep embracing that inner superhero, explore new galaxies, and unleash your boundless creativity. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Brothers Geek Out podcast.